Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome again to reading Montesquieu's Spirit of the Laws. Today we're starting second part of the Spirit of the Laws, which composes books 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, starting with book 8. Okay, which what is this? And again, these books will focus on basically the question. It will start out. The first two books will deal with on offensive and defensive relations, the rights of nations in that sense, the rights of nations, right? And the question of what is right returnedness, right? So therefore, let's focus right on it. The laws in relation with defensive force. How republics provide for their securities. If a republic is small, it is destroyed by a foreign force. If it is large, it is destroyed by internal vice. So small republics will be destroyed by foreign forces, and large republics are destroyed by internal vice. This dual drawback taints democracies and aristocracies equally, whether they are good or whether they are bad. The ill is in the thing itself. There is no form that can remedy it. In other words, this is no form internal. Thus, it is very unlikely that ultimately men will have to would have been obliged to live forever under the governments of one alone if they had not devised the kind of constitution that has all the internal advantages of republic government and the external force of monarchy. I speak of a federal republic. Now, this is very interesting. He speaks of a federal republic. Now, this is the question: what is meant by a federal? Now, a lot of people think, oh, this means federalism. Not really. And that's what continues, right? This form of government is an agreement by which many political bodies consent to become citizens of a larger state that they want to form. It is societies of societies that makes a new one, which can be enlarged by new associates that unite with it. So therefore, this is confederation, right? Such associations made Greece flourish for a long time. This is the idea: the leagues, the associations, right? These confederacies, right? By using them, the Romans attacked the universe. In other words, associations, the societies of societies. These again, this is used for societies. The agreements that Rome used to make with allies with other cities, right? That that Rome attacked the universe, and with their use alone, the universe defended itself from the Romans. And when Rome reached its greatest height, the barbarians were able to resist it by associations made beyond the Danube and the Rhine, associations made from fright. Because of them, Holland, German, and the Swiss leagues are regarded in Europe as eternal republics. Therefore, this is the idea that Germans is it was Germany of that he's writing. He's writing about time. Montesquieu's writing not before the rise of the unification of Germany, the first unification of Germany, which is a product of nationalism, the French Revolution, and the product of the French Revolution, and the impact of the French Revolution on the German states, the principalities and states that made Germany. That what Germany was really ultimately at the time a confederation of German states, okay, not a unified thing. In fact, that's what the Holy Roman really was, a confederation of states, not a real principality, not a real monarchy. Even though the Austrian monarchy and the emperor acted despotically and had despotic character sometimes, particularly with Austria and Hungary. But here, this is the problem, what we're saying here, right? The associations of towns were more necessary formerly than they are today. So therefore, the social towns were more necessary formerly than today. A city without power risked great perils. Conquest made it lose. Conquest made it lose not only executive and legislative power as today, but also all property among men. This sort of republic, able to resist external force, can be maintained at all sides without internal corruption. The form of the society curbs back every drawback. So the Federal Republic, the small cities, they can police themselves, and then the association agreement at this level that they are able to have the collective strength in order to hold back foreign powers, right? The one who might want to usurp could scarcely have equal credit in all the confederated states. If he became too strong in one state, he would alarm all the others. If he subjugated a part, the part could resist him. The part still could resist him with forces independent of those he had usurped, and overwhelm him before he had completely established himself. So this is a very interesting argument about the concept of confederation. Confederations kind of check the power of the overly ambitious, right? If sedition occurs in one of the members of the confederation, the others can pacify it. If some abuses are introduced else somewhere, they are corrected by the healthy parts. This state can perish. This state can perish if one place, without perishing in another. The confederation can be dissolved, and the confederation results remain sovereign. So look again. So therefore, this is another point. We continue here. If sedition occurs in one member of the confederation, the other can pacify it. If some abuses are introduced somewhere, they are corrected by the healthy part. Right? If this state can perish, if one places without perishing another, the confederation can be dissolved, and the confederacy remains sovereign. Okay. So therefore, the confederates can remain all sovereignty. This is the idea of confederation. That the real power is that the who are sovereign are the members. Okay, and in a way, this echoes confederations are in a way echoes the very nature of the polis in that sense. That every citizen was sovereign entity. That collectively, this is the original idea of the polis, right? That it was a joint stock ownership where every single member is sovereign, and therefore jointly together they cooperate. Well, here this is what happened. A federated republic or confederation does the same thing. Composed of small republic, it enjoys the goodness of the internal government of each one. In regard to exterior, it has, by the force of their association, all the advantages of large monarchies. So this is how this idea, this is the confederatio. In other words, but this is the problem of the American problem, right? The American problem goes too far. The 14th Amendment, this is why the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which destroys the confederation and therefore turns it into a despotism. See, this is the great insight of Montesquieu will have, there's no problem with the American Republic until the 14th Amendment, which then subordinates the states to the federal entity and therefore forces the states to comply and therefore reduces the level of sovereignty of the states. That it conditions the sovereignty of the states to the agreement, what the federal government agrees to, the federal entity agrees to, and therefore shifts power to the federal system. And therefore, the history of American history from that point on, from the post-Civil War on, is the ever-limiting of state power, particularly in the 20th century, and the empowerment of the courts. And this is what the danger, this is the corruption of a republic in this Montesquieuan eyes, in this sense. Okay, chapter 2, that the federal constitution should be composed of states of the same nature, above all republican states. Okay, so therefore, the idea that if you're going to have a confederate republican, all the states got to be the same. We must be republican. The Canaanites were destroyed because they were small monarchies that had not confederated and did not have a common defense. This is because it is not in the nature of small monarchies to confederate. The Federal Republic of Germany, this is not the Federal Republic of Germany of the post-World War II, but this is talking about the German states, right? Is composed of free towns and small states subject to princes. Against the small states subject to princes. Experience shows that it is more imperfect than federal republics of Holland and Switzerland. So therefore, because of the subject of princes, these are more imperfect. The Freetown, the German system is less, because the Dutch and the Swiss are more republican in their character, right? There's connections of all republics. The spirit of monarchy in war and expansion. The spirit of republic is peace and moderation. The only way these two sorts of governments can continue to exist together in one federal republic is by force. Thus, we see in Roman history that when the Venetian chose a king, all the small republics of Tuscany abandoned them. In Greece, All was lost when the Macedonian kings gained a place among the Emaphitonian Titians. The Federal Republic of Germany, composed of princes and free towns, continued to exist because it had a leader who was, in his way, the magistrate of the Union, and in a way, a monarch. So, therefore, in other words, if you have the monarchies try to do this, but then the problem was that there was a monarch, a magistrate of the Union, the emperor, right? That's the whole idea of the emperor. He's right. Remember, Montesquieu's writing. He's seeing the Holy Roman Emperor as not as really a true unified state, but rather this emperor who is a magistrate. Okay, the emperor is a monarch, a magistrate, a monarch in that sense. Elected emperor, they are elected in that sense, even though there might be a dynasty. Um, but then again, we have to remember 1807 with the three defeat of the three emperors in that famous battle by Napoleon, where one of the part conclusions of it at Bratislava, Slovakia, was the ending of the Austrian-Hungarian, the ending of the Holy Roman Emperor, and then the creation of Austria-Hungary. Right, that's that whole line. So, chapter 3: other things required in a federal republic. In the Republic of Holland, one province cannot make an alliance without the consent of the others. This law is good and even necessary in a federal republic. It is missing from the German constitution, where it would curb the misfortunes that can come from all the members from the imprudence, action, and avarice of one alone. A republic united in a political confederation had given itself entirely and has nothing more to give. It is unlikely that the states that associate will be the same size and have the equal power. Right? The Republic of Lechians, Republic of Lechians, was an association of 23 towns. The large ones had 3 votes in common council, the medium-sized ones 2, and the small ones 1. The Republic of Holland is composed of 7 provinces, 7 large and small, each having 1 vote. The towns of Lechia paid the cost in proportion to their votes. The province of Howell cannot follow this proportion. Thus, they must follow of that of their power, as they follow that of the power. In Lechia, the judges and magistrates of the towns were elected by the common council in proportion that we have said. In the Republic of Holland, they are not elected by the common council, and each town names its magistrate. If one had to propose a model for a fine republic, I would choose the Republic of Lechia. So therefore, this is like the Lechians of the ancients versus the more modern understanding of the Holland. The Holland is not choice-worthy. So let's think about this. In many ways, Montesquieu is kind of suggesting proportional representation, direct representation, direct election if you're going to have this, it cannot be simply an equal vote system, like the Dutch model, right? The Dutch composed of 7 portions, each having 1 vote. In other words, there must be proportionality to what's being decided based upon something. There must be a level of proportionality at the same time. But there is a problem with that. That is then that the big republics would dominate. If the republics are too big, if the things are too big, then big ones could just swallow up the small ones, and that's the problem, right? So, chapter 4: how despotic states provide for their security. Now, we go from republics, right? Just as republics unite to provide for their security, despotic states separate and hold themselves, so to speak, apart. They sacrifice a part of the country, ravage the frontiers, and leave them deserted. The main part of the empire becomes inaccessible. It is accepted in geometry that a large body, the smaller the relativity, its circumference. Therefore, this practice of laying waste to the frontiers is more tolerable in large states than in medium-sized ones. The state does to itself all the ill that could be done by a cruel enemy, but an enemy that could not be checked. In other words, that could not be checked. The despotic state preserves itself by another kind of separation. by which the distant powers are put in the hands of a feudatory prince. The Mongols, the Persians, and the emperors of China have their feudatory princes, and the Turks are very well off for very well off for having put the Tartars, the Moldovians, and the Walchalsians, and former the Transylvanians, between their enemies and themselves. In other words, they create princes, they create these independent principates and that or princes that are they're subordinate to the power of this guy. That they could absorb them, but they separate them. They create them, and therefore they make them dependent on them, right? And they could, but therefore they are like body shields, meat shields for the empire. Now, chapter 5, how monarchy provides for its security. Monarchy does not destroy itself as despotic states. So despotic states destroy itself. They sacrifice parts. Okay, monarchy does not do what despotic, but a state of medium size may be quickly invaded. Therefore, if it has strongholds that protect its frontiers and armies that defend those strongholds, so therefore it needs strongholds and armies. There one disputes artfully, courageously, and opinionatedly over the smallest area. Despotic states make invasions. Only monarchies make war. So monarchies make war in that sense. Strongholds belong to monarchies. Despotic states are afraid to have them. They dare not entrust them to anyone, for no one there loves the state or the prince. Okay, despotics, no one loves the state nor the prince. Kings rely on honor and therefore love, right? That's the whole point. Chapter 6, on the defensive forces of the states in general. Now notice um, for a state to be at full force, it must be such that there is a relation between the speed with which one can execute an undertaking against it and its promptness in rendering this ineffective. So therefore, there must be the ability to the speed which to exercise an undertaking against it, and the promptness rendering in making that the attack is effective. If the one who attacks can suddenly appear everywhere, the one who defends must also able to appear everywhere. So therefore, you must have in other words, there must, and therefore, defending, attacking a thing. If someone's going to attack, the state must be able to respond to it equally as fast. Um, Everywhere. Consequently, the state must be of a medium extent, so to be able to be proportionate to the degree of the speed nature has given men to move from one place to another, but it's given technology that changes that increases the size. So it's in other words, it must be moderate. Moderate means the ability to quickly react. If because of technology, this has expanded the size of what considered as moderate. What is moderate is that if anyone attacks you, you have to be as they attack, you must be able to respond to it, quickly traverse and go over. If technology gives you the means to do that, then the area you can cover and the speed you can do it drastically increases what is considered moderate in this sense. This is why it's important to understand that. Spain and France are precisely of this size. Their force communicates so well that they immediately go where they're wanted. Their armies join together and go rapidly from one frontier to the other. And one fears none of the things that need a certain amount of time for their execution. Okay. It is remarkable fortunate for France that its capital is closer to the different frontiers in proportion to their greatest weakness. And the prince here sees each part of the country the better, and it is more exposed. But when a vast state, such as Persia, is attacked, several months must pass before the dispersed troops can assemble, and there can be no forced march for this length of time, as there can be for 2 weeks. If the army of the frontier is beaten, it will surely disperse because its place of retreat are not nearby. The victorious army, finding no resistance, advances by long daily marches, appears at the capital, besieges it. When the governors of the province have been alerted to send help, those who judge the revolution at hand hasten it by not obeying. For people faithful only because of punishment is at hand, there are no longer faithful when it is distant. They work for their own particular interest. Okay, this is the problem. Right? In other words, there are people who work by fear. If the hand is not there to punish them, therefore they don't. They will work for their interest, not the other person's interest. Right? For people faithful only because of punishment is at hand. No longer are when faithful when that punishment is distant. Right? And they work for their particular. The empire dissolves. The capital is taken. The conqueror disputes the province with his governor. In other words, the conqueror disputes the provinces with the governors. The governors who remain they'll dispute the question of this. Right. True power of a prince consists not so much in the ease he has in conquering, as in the difficulty there is in attacking him. And if I dare put it in this way, in the immutability of his condition. But the expansion of states making them expose new sides from which they can be taken. So therefore, the danger here is, in other words, it's not conquering. The ability of a true power prince not to, but the ability of what? Um, uh, 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 but in other words, the stability, immutability of his situation, his condition, whatever he is. And but the expansion of state makes them expose new sides which can be taken. Thus, just as monarchs should be wise in increasing their power, they should be no less prudent in limiting it. So therefore, that's double side. They should increase power, but also they should limit it. While they put an end to the drawbacks of being small, they must always have an eye out for the drawbacks of being too large. That's the problem of it. Too large monarchy. Remember what he said earlier in the previous chapter about that. If a monarchy grows too large, they can't govern it. It will break up. It will break up. It will divide. Reflections. Chapter 7. The enemy of a great prince who has long reigned has accused him 1,000 times, more from fear than from reasons. I believe of having formed and pursued the project of universal monarchy. That is Louis XIV. Right? If he had succeeded in it, nothing would have been more fatal to Europe, to his first subjects, to himself, and to his family. Heaven knows the true advantages had better served him by defeats than it would have by victories. Instead of making him the only king in Europe, it had favored him by making him the most powerful of all. The people of his nation, who in foreign countries have affected only by that which have been left behind, who on leaving their home regarded glory as sovereign good, and in distant countries as an obstacle to their return, who agonize even by their good qualities because they seem to scorn them, who can bear wounds, perils, and exhaustion, but not the loss of their pleasures, who love nothing so much as their gaiety, and are consoled for the loss of a battle by singing to their general, would never have complained such an undertaking, neither have completed such an undertaking, which cannot fail in one country without failing in all the others, or fail for a moment without failing forever. So therefore, this is the response to this. The idea here is against, in many sense, Louis XIV, right? Louis XIV's project, and that the nation that he said, the people of this nation, the French in one sense. He explains it was something what the French character is gonna. If he succeeded, it would fail greatly, right? Chapter 8. A case where the defensive force of the state is inferior to its offensive force. The comment of Sir de Coy to Charles V, that the English are never so weak or so easy to defeat as at home. This was said of the Romans. This was what the Carthaginians experienced. It is what will happen to any power that has sent its army far away in order to bring together by force the discipline and military power those who are divided among themselves by political or civil interests. The state is weak because of the ills that remain and has been further weakened by the remedy. The maximum of Sir de Coy is an exception to the general rule by which one is never to undertake distant wars. This is exception, and this exception indeed proves the rule, because it applies only to those who have themselves broken the rule. In other words, In other words, this is the thing that the weakness is at home. They can be easily defeated in their homeland because of the fighting internally. In other words, look at how um, what's his name, Hannibal was able to, in Rome, in Italy, because of the divisions within the Italian cities, between Rome and her cities, Hannibal was able to play them against each other, right? As the Romans divide and conquered, Hannibal also divided and conquered, and always defeated Roman armies in Rome. He is only after conquering. They defeat him by grabbing and threatening Syracuse, right? Only by threatening Syracuse, this forces Hannibal to come back and rescue that, and is defeated there. So Rome's power was abroad, right? This is the English. The English power is abroad, and therefore they're able to be defeated at home because of their weakness. And one should not engage in activity because you're weak. But this is what he says here, right? Chapter 9: all size, all force, all power is relative. Now, this is a very interesting point. In other words, chapter 9 on the relative size of states. All size, all force, all power is relative. One must take care that in seeking to increase real size, one does not diminish relative size. In other words, this is a very important understanding because remember, the military idea is that the ability to respond to force with relatively things. Same thing with the ability of governing. You must be able to communicate and govern. If you're so large, it takes too much time to govern. There becomes a disconnect between the regions. Okay, and therefore you need to, this is why federal republics are optimal. And republics, large republics, are destroyed because of the corruption that happens. Because why? Because local interests will have different interests than the national, the center, and that therefore the time governments will hear what's happening here. It's too slow to respond, and the policies often won't work in other places. So you need to have divided. In other words, you need to have the confederated structure in order to allow for a large republic. Otherwise, it's better to have small republics in that sense. Um, and that's kind of Montesquieu's point here in that sense. But let's continue this. The idea that all size is relative, all size, all force, all power is relative. And therefore, leaking size to increase real size does not diminish relative size. Toward the middle of the reign of Louis XIV, France was at the highest point of its relative size. Germany did not yet have the great monarchies it has since had, right? And Italy was in the same situation. Scotland and England had not formed a monarchy. Aragon had not yet formed the one with Castile. The separate parts of Spain were weakened by this, and weakened Spain. Muscovy was as yet no better known in Europe than was the Crimea, right? So therefore, this is the idea that this is Louis XIV. Russia was not that powerful in that kind of Crimea. It was not really known from that. Spain was kind of weakened because of disunion of their. Scotland and England was okay. They were not unified really, even though they had a king in common. Here, Charles II, the beginning of Charles II's reign. But there was not a clear unification of the monarchy. This will happen. The act of union is the act of union of stabilizing the union of Scotland and England occurs with the Anne, Queen Anne. It was Queen Anne, 1807, 1708, I think, the act of union, right? So therefore, this is the thing that it takes, and it's at the end of it's at the end of the war with it's during the reign of Anne and the Act of Union during the end of the war with Louis XIV that the Act of Union clearly unifies England or Britain, made Britain, the creation of the federal, what is unified, the four kingdoms, right? The four kingdoms. The four kingdoms, are they? The four kingdoms are England, technically England, Wales, Ireland. No, Wales not technically counted. Wales is kind of under England always. So England's never a king. Wales never had a king. It always, at best, only had a prince. That the English kind of created, right, in that sense. The Irish technically was a nation. So, but Wales are a nation. So four nations, right? The Scottish, English, Welsh, and Irish, right? And then what? France was that. They had the three kings. There were four kingdoms: the Kingdom of Scotland, Kingdom of Ireland. Well, never, Ireland never really had a king. It was the three kingdoms. France, King of France. England was King of France, King of England, and King of Scotland. Right. That's that. Three kings, four nations, maybe five nations. If you count that little part of France that we have, those islands that are part of England. So therefore, that's that idea, the relative size of this. This is that weird word. And chapter 10, the last chapter of book 9, on the weakness of neighboring states. When a neighboring state is in decline, one should take care not to hasten its ruin, because this is the most fortunate possible situation possible. There is nothing more suitable for a prince than to be close to another who has received in his stead all the blows and all the outrages of fortune. By conquering such a state, one really increases as much in real power as one loses in relative power. It's a great idea. This idea that if you conquer that, then you don't necessarily gain more. In fact, that you maybe gain their problems. Okay, and therefore that's why you lost the loss in relative power. You might be, in fact, in having them separate, you have more relative power because they're weak, you're strong. They have all the problems. Their weakness make you stronger. Okay, so that's the weird aspects of this. So let's stop here. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the thing below, and I will respond to them. If you've liked the video, like it. Share with a friend. Encourage others to share it on social media and other things. If you didn't like it, you can say nah, but say why in the comments. Another thing, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe. My fancy the fan out there. Okay, it's getting warmer now, so I have to. And I should have been more careful. You see the pillow over there; it's usually not there, and you can see the background area. But no, there it is. That's it. I don't put a false background. This is me. Okay. Um, and I'm not that good in technology to have active pictures and things. So again, if you want to subscribe. I'd like to build a channel. We've got now over 306 people so far. So more people can sign in. I'd like to really push this up some more. If you've another thing you do, you can follow me on social media below. Another thing you can do is if you want to help, you can do stuff by subscribe star and Patreon. Please, this is allow me to do some more. Or you can buy my books. I should kind of fix my card down below more and separate those two things. But we'll see. I'm not advertising the. I should advertise this thing a little more, but since we're not doing the. Oops, hold on. Since I'm not doing this, is not Aristotle. It's kind of not germane to push this. But again, if you buy it, you help me. So if you haven't bought it already, so I'm not. Please get other people to watch this. Help me spread the news. There must be somebody interested in Montesquieu up there. This is anyone who's doing American constitutionalism better be interested in Montesquieu because he's the father of American Constitution. Well, that's it for the day. I wish you all a good day. Next time we meet, we will look at chapter 10. Take care and bye bye.